Good morning, everyone. I am Marcel Brown, the most trusted name in technology, and this is Facebook Live Friday, where I talk about various things technology and whatever else I feel like talking about. So, last week was the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and coincidentally, I know a lot of people that are in Las Vegas this week for the promotional products ad specialty type show. So I guess January is a big month for conventions in Las Vegas. So anyway, back to Consumer Electronics Show. I touched briefly on it last week as it was wrapping up, and most of the overviews I've seen about the Consumer Electronics Show and most of the products there that were unveiled or shown off at the show, there wasn't anything that was huge as far as like some new big product announcement that came out of Consumer Electronics Show. So a lot of people kind of felt somewhat underwhelmed. And for the most part, looking at stuff that was revealed, nothing really super exciting from my perspective. But the reality is a lot of these CES shows aren't really the big stage for a big unveiling. They're mostly kind of an outlet for manufacturers to show off what they're going to release this year, for other manufacturers to show off kind of concept technology that might be into a product in the next few years. But most companies, if they're going to unveil something big, say like Apple, are going to do it at their own shows, or as I'll touch on here soon, Nintendo, does their own shows. So you shouldn't really expect too many big things to come out of the Consumer Electronics Show. Occasionally, you might get a startup that shows off, as their big unveiling, that sort of thing. But so far, generally not necessarily a lot of big products come out at the Consumer Electronics Show. So, but that being said, there were some things to be mindful of, to note that were displayed in general. As I talked about last week a bit, the Amazon Alexa got a lot of press. So this was probably, the main thing that a lot of people talked about with the Consumer Electronics Show. And that is speaking to a bigger trend. A lot of companies showed off this year internet-enabled appliances. So things like your washing machines and dishwashers, and even refrigerators and stoves and that sort of thing. So with the products like Amazon Alexa or similar ones, you will be able to voice command your home and a lot more of the appliances in it. And that's going to continue to be a bigger and bigger trend. So this year, with the press that Amazon Alexa is getting, plus just the evolution of technology, we should expect to see a lot more of the integrated appliances coming out, and just in general, the smart home technologies becoming more integrated. So that was one big thing to come out of the Consumer Electronics Show. TVs are another big thing. A lot of TV companies show off their stuff at Consumer Electronics Show, and as usual, the trend is thinner, higher resolutions, bigger in general. So that's always been the trend with TV. So nothing really spectacular to come out of that. But if you're interested in getting a TV, certainly this is the year, or I should say, every year is the year to get a new TV. But things are becoming very interesting with you've heard of probably 4K TVs. They show off 8K TVs now, and it can get confusing. But the good news is everything's getting bigger, better, and also less expensive on a lot of things. So as the new technologies push the envelope, then the older technologies, even if they're only a couple years old, suddenly become a lot more affordable. A lot of car stuff was shown. Most of the car technology shown is kind of futuristic, maybe at least 2 or 3 years out. And again, simply because self-driving car technology, while it is fairly mature at this point compared to what we saw 3 to 5 years ago, there's still regulatory things to get past, the hurdles of having governments allow people to do self-driving cars. So a lot of the stuff is still kind of percolating. It's in the background, it's there, it's ready to come out to the public, but things have to get out of the way for that to happen. Robots was another thing that were shown at the Consumer Electronics Show that is just starting to peek its head as far as a mainstream technology. So a lot of the robots shown were really advanced compared to what I've seen in years past. The question is, as usual with cutting edge technology, is it better to wait a while for the next generation to come out? The pricing in some cases is really high, but some of these devices could be very useful. So I'm going to keep my eye on these technologies specifically because I think that is kind of the next wave, similar to the home automation, home integration with devices, but also having robots that can do things that are useful for you, especially kind of given the example of a robot that will roam the house and keep an eye on certain things for you and is able to alert you if there are, say, odd noises. The robot can actually go and investigate the noise, and if you aren't at home, you can see through the robot's eyes and see what the robot sees, or tell it to go somewhere and that sort of thing. So some very potentially interesting applications of robotic technology, more so than just the standard vacuums and that sort of thing, which again we saw a lot more of those type of products coming out. And speaking of robot vacuums, I did read that some bigger names in vacuuming technology were coming out with products, and supposedly the prices are going to be less, which should help competition bring the prices down across the board. So that's another thing I'll be keeping my eye on there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the bigger announcements come from companies themselves. So for example, I said Apple, and some of the big news this week was this is the 10th anniversary of the unveiling of the iPhone. So back in January of 2007 at the Macworld show, when Apple still did shows in January, they don't do those anymore. This was the year that they unveiled the iPhone, and they unveiled it in January, but it did not go on sale until June. And so it was kind of one of the biggest hype products in a long time, because you had basically about 6 months between the time it was announced and the time it was released for sale. So there's been a lot of articles and news about the 10th anniversary of the iPhone, and a lot of articles about how far the iPhone has come in those 10 years, how far in general just the smartphone industry changed, and how society has changed in the 10 years that the iPhone has come out. So obviously a lot of positive, looking back, nostalgia, a lot of people wondering, what did we do before our iPhones? It's hard to imagine. It's been 10 years. And even for, obviously for some people, they didn't buy iPhones. I didn't get an iPhone until about 2 years later, ironically, because I had just renewed my contract with Sprint, so I had a phone and I had a 2-year contract, and I was kind of waiting to see where this iPhone technology went. And so 2 years later, when my contract with Sprint ran out, since AT&T at the time was the only company offering the iPhone, I left Sprint, went to AT&T, got, I think it was a 3GS was my first iPhone. So I guess for me it's more like 8 years that I've had the iPhone, but still it seems like I can't remember how I ever did business before the iPhone, or even just in life in general, all the things I look up all the time and have at my fingertips now. But a lot of people also too write articles about how the iPhone has changed society for the worse. So a lot more distracted people, a lot more people that are online or on their phones all the time instead of being present and that sort of thing. So as with any technology that is disruptive like the iPhone was and still is, really, there's good and bad. And for the most part, I think that as society basically learns how to live with world-changing technologies, it's like any human evolution, basically. There's a feeling out period in time when people figure out, oh, well, these are the new social norms, this is how you do certain things. So I think we're still in that sort of growing up period with smartphone technology, where we're still learning what are the the proper social norms to deal with this sort of stuff. And so, as with anything, I think society will mature in that and will learn to do better with it. And then obviously other technologies change. So things like distracted driving, well, that's going to sort of solve itself as soon as self-driving cars become more in the mainstream, because if your car is driving itself, then you can't be distracted, or it doesn't matter if you're distracted because the car is taking care of it. So time marches on, technology marches on, and obviously things change as that sort of thing, as others intertwine and change the way we interact with our technology anyway. So yeah, so 10th anniversary of the iPhone. I expect you'll continue to hear more and more about the tenure of the iPhone, especially as we get closer to June when it was actually released. But just keep an eye on that and keep looking for those stories. I'm sure there'll be a ton of them. So speaking again of unveilings, actually last night, which was this morning technically in Japan, Nintendo unveiled its new console system called the Switch. Now it's an interesting name. I don't really like the name Switch because it's just a little too simple for me, but it actually describes what it does in a way. And so it's a very interesting, unique, different console for Nintendo, or from anyone really. It's not your standard video game console like, say, a PlayStation or the Xbox. As usual, Nintendo is trying to push the envelope on being different, not just coming out with a faster, bigger gaming console like Xbox and PlayStation basically do. So the thing about the Switch is that it's kind of a hybrid console in that it's your traditional console that you play on your TV, but it's also a mobile device. But it's not your small screen little Game Boy or Nintendo DS type of device. It's actually more like a tablet. And the interesting thing is that you can put this tablet, the main console is basically this tablet type device, that when you want to play it on your TV, you put it in a docking station and then it displays to your TV. But if you want to take it with you, then you pull the tablet-like device out of the dock, and then you can attach the controllers, which are very interesting controllers. You can attach it to the sides of the tablet, so now you have kind of like a gaming tablet that you hold up, like this, and you can take it obviously anywhere you want. You can then, if you have friends that have the Nintendo Switch, you can all kind of play together in a local co-op gaming environment. So I expect you'll see a lot of people doing that. They'll take their Switches and hook up with friends and play games together. Similar again to the way some recent DS games were, but obviously bigger screen, different controllers. It gives you more of a full console type of feel than the traditional handheld gaming. So that by itself is pretty interesting. Like I said, the control system is very interesting because you can actually have a control in each hand, even whether you're playing on the tablet mode or whether you detach it and play on the TV. And they even showed some games where you could put the tablet on a table, and then you'd play with another person and they'd each have a control, and you'd do things like basically do like a quick draw like in the old West, and the controllers would know with a very accurate timing who drew first and pulled the trigger first and that sort of thing. So some very interesting concepts. Reminds me about some of the things that the original Nintendo Wii kind of pioneered and people got really excited about. So I think this type of concept has been a long time in coming, where you have one console that can be mobile but also play on the TV. So that was, just like I said, unveiled last night. As far as we in the United States, it was 10 o'clock Central Time when the live stream came across, but that was actually this morning in Japan. So kind of one of those funny things is like, well, what day was it really released or introduced? So that being said, the Switch is due to be shipping March 3rd. As Nintendo generally, unfortunately, has really bad at doing. They tend to underestimate demand. There's always the question: are they doing that on purpose to try to make it seem like it's a really popular product, or are they just really bad at forecasting demand? I would think by this time they would be better at it, but who knows for sure. But already the stories are saying that there's going to be limited supply of the Nintendo Switch. Um, that being said, they should be, and hopefully be very much available by the end of the year for holiday time, because I expect that this will be one of the hotter tech toys of the year for the holiday season, if not the whole year. We'll have to keep an eye out and see. Um, you may be able to pre-order it soon. I'm going to keep my eye out to see if places like Best Buy are going to allow pre-orders. But as it is right now, the only place you can pre-order it is in New York City if you go to this morning's Nintendo event in New York. So we'll see where that goes, and we'll see how availability is. But I think based on what I've seen so far, my gut feeling is that this will be a fairly popular Nintendo product. Maybe as popular as the Wii was. The Wii U was not necessarily real popular, so this may be Nintendo's return to big time again if this concept really takes off. And I think, like I said, based on what I'm looking at here, it definitely looks like it will be a popular device. So if you guys have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out to me, and I can comment back, or send you a message, or maybe talk about it next week on Facebook Friday Live. So today is Friday the 13th, and if you live in the Midwest like I do, it's Ice-Mageddon, so everybody stay safe and warm this weekend, and I will talk to you next week.